Alright, so I know Miss Cedar had already given you like handouts, but I made some new ones and put them out on the tables. So the first step with glazing is when you get your work, you want to take a damp sponge, or well first actually, you want to put down newspaper. You want to make sure you're at a table that's nice and clean. You don't want any dust getting on your work because it's going to cause problems with the glaze. It's going to crawl and it's going to pinhole. So after you have your clean setup, what you're going to take a damp sponge. You don't want a wet sponge. You want like barely any moisture in it. You're just going to lightly kind of wipe away any dust. And you don't want to blow the dust off because it's been clear. It's going to be a lot more harmful to you than blowing the dust off after you might have sanded something. So you're just going to lightly kind of wipe away any dust and then let it dry. And while you're waiting for that to dry, what you can do is you can go out to the glaze closet and you can pick out your glazes. So there's hundreds of these probably. And the glazes are the ones that are horizontally are the ones underneath, and the ones vertically are the ones that are over on top. So you can pick out your glazes, and there are yellow sticky notes in there and pencils. And also when you're picking out your glazes, if you're doing mugs or bowls or something that you're going to want to eat or drink out of, look on the side of them and make sure that they have the fork and knife so that they're food safe, because you don't want to eat out of something that's not food safe because it might be toxic. And there's also a list of glazes that aren't food safe on the wall in there. So then after you do that, you can have pick out your glazes and you can start glazing. So what I do is I always glaze the inside of my pieces first because that helps prevent your glaze getting on the outside. And then if you have glaze on the outside, your hands will pick it off a little bit and you might knock it off or chip it off. So you want to be really careful about that. So what I do is, like, this one has, I think I put 2 coats in this already. So I'm just going to glaze it with the rose. So I put 3 coats. And some of the glazes are, like, this one's okay to use, and you can, like, test it on your finger. So you want your glaze kind of that consistency, maybe a little thinner. The kiln has been firing a little hotter. So it's making the glazes run a little more. So you don't need it as thick. So, and when if you're doing that, rather than 2 thick layers and 2 thick layers over each other, you can do 2 thin layers and 2 thinner layers. In this glaze, it's all settled at the bottom, so what you can do is, there are these cups, so you can take some glaze and scoop it out, and like mix it up for yourself and keep it on your shelf in a Sharpie. So make sure you're labeling what glaze you're using in the container so that you know and don't mix them up with other glazes. So then, also, when you're glazing, there are different brushes. So like these ones are stiffer, these ones are softer. I prefer using these kind for glazing. Make sure that you're not putting your brushes away like this at the end, and if you find any like this, wash them out. And so these brushes, because they're so soft, they really help you apply the glaze more evenly. So you want to just coat your inside of your vessel or your pot really well in an even layer. And sometimes if the glaze is kind of thick when you brush it on, what you can do is you can kind of like twirl it around so it coats it evenly. And you can also pour in and then just kind of pour it back into the bottle. There's also the bowls and those larger containers that you can use for pouring glaze. And then another thing is you can use the banding wheel. So there's banding wheels all over there. When you pick them up, they come apart. So pick it up from the bottom. Otherwise, I'm going to drop this and then it's going to echo up the classroom. I really can do it. So pick them up like this, and then use a banding wheel to apply your glaze. So if you want to do like stripes or something, or put glaze on your rim, it's kind of a good way to do it because it helps you put it on more evenly than trying to paint like that straight circle line with your hands while holding it. And then another thing that I've been doing that you can do is you can use this and you can kind of rub away your glazing areas. You probably want to use your mask when you're doing that so you're not breathing in all the glaze dust. Some of you I've noticed have like the lines and stuff like in your work. So that's really good for like getting the glaze in your lines and then taking it off so the glaze sits in. You can see that like difference, that contrast. And then there's clear glaze, so you can just paint over that so you don't have the raw clay texture. Also, what I've been doing is you can take wax resist, and like I put down the green glaze, and then I put the wax resist over it, and then the wax resist dries. And it takes a while to dry. Like this one's still kind of wet. And you want to be really careful with the wax resist because it runs a lot sometimes, and you can use it to make like patterns and texture differences on your clay, on your glaze. So when you put it on, you want to be careful that it's not going to drip to where you don't want it. And if you look at this mug, you can see, and you can feel the difference too, that this one has the resist from the bottom glaze to the top glaze. So there's like a more shiny glaze underneath, and then the matte glaze was resisted with the wax. And so then after the wax dries, you can just paint over it with your second glaze coat, and it'll just resist the glaze. And you might, after, have to go in some areas and kind of like wipe away with a tool or your sponge and get rid of some of those areas, because if you leave that pink glaze there, it's gonna just bead on top of the green glaze. And another thing you can do is you can take your glaze and like put the pink and then do the green over it. And you can do graffito. So if you paint this over your first layer, graffito is just carving in through one color to find another, like get another color underneath. And you can take any of these tools. This is like a dentist tool, I guess. And you can just kind of scribble in the glaze and like write into it and draw into it. So that's another way of making patterns in your glazing. And when you're glazing, you want to make sure too that for your cylinders, you're keeping all the same glaze colors and like patterns and color palette for your 4 cylinders, and then try to relate your base back to that. We don't want different glazes. You don't want to make something purple and then make something green, make something blue. So you want to make sure that all the colors are being used the same on everything. Yeah, so try to like keep everything clean and neat when you're glazing. And there's also the trailing bottle, so you can do line work over your glaze if you want to do that. Some people have started doing that in other classes. And make sure that you're glazing the inside first, and then also on the bottom of your pots, you want to make sure that if you're going to glaze the bottom, you're not glazing the bottom of your foot. So what I do is I'll take a ruler or like a flat brush handle like this, and you can check the bottom to see where your glaze is hitting. So like you can see in the middle of this foot that there's no glaze hitting the brush. So that'll be fine in the kiln. And another thing is you want to use your scraper tools. So any of those tools or this, and really just kind of scrape away the glaze at the edge of your foot. Or you can use like your damp sponge and kind of wipe it away. And this will help keep the glaze from running and sticking your pot to the kiln shelf. You really want to make sure that your foot is clean before you put it over there. And you can leave your work out on your shelves until like the day before you fire the kiln. And you want to make sure that your work is glazed like a day or 2 in advance, just to be sure that the glaze is dry. Because if there's that moisture in it, it's still going to be the risk of it can blow up again in the kiln. And then clean up. You want to make sure that you wash all of your brushes. And you want to put them back in here. Make sure that the bristles are up, because some people have been putting them bristled down, and that just ruins your brushes, and they're not going to be nice for applying the glaze. And if you're using the wax, also when you're washing your wax brush, because it makes it stiff, make sure you're washing it with warm soapy water. And you want to get all the wax out. And then you can throw your newspaper away. Make sure your lids are on your glaze. And put them back. And also when you're taking your glaze off the shelf, be careful, because some of the lids aren't put them on them all the way. And if you pull it off, you're going to get glaze all over you. So, I think that's it. So, yeah. Any questions? And if you need any help with anything, just ask me. I'll try to help you as best as I can.